As a result of the 2010 new business item, a statewide organizing task force was put together to develop a plan to energize and mobilize members in statewide actions. The task force brought their report to the OEA Board, and the board approved the adoption of the report and the recommended implementation strategies. The report can be found on page 137 in your handbook under the Report tab. And at this time, I would like to invite Walt Hellman, a member of the Hillsboro Education Association, to come to the stage. Walt? Task Force committee members come to the side of the stage as well. Walt served as the chair of our statewide organizing task force, and I've asked him to share and provide an overview of their report for you this evening. So, Walt, thank you for your work. The podium is now yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair, leaders, and fellow members. Before giving our task force report tonight, I'd like to say a word about the task force and introduce the task force members as they come up. Like many of us here, I have worked on a number of committees, but I felt especially inspired by the members of this task force team. What a wonderful experience it's been to be introduced to people with such good sense, such good experience, such a diversity of good ideas, and such good judgment. This is a group where ego never got in the way, where both reasoned discussion and good humor prevailed, even given the difficult work that we had to do. We knew we were working on something important, and I'm so grateful that I was able to work together with these committee members. So please let me introduce the members of the statewide organizing task force. From Independence, Oregon, Ben Gorman. It's interesting, we did all our work by phone over a number of meetings, and this is the first time we've seen each other. So, from the Dalles, our bagpipe expert and player, Rory O'Halloran. From Eugene, representing community colleges, Jim Salt. Also from Eugene, Tad Shannon. And from Tualatin, Al Spencer. I'd like to also recognize Kat Shearer from Beaverton, who was on the committee and helped us out in the first couple of meetings, but had to leave for other commitments after that. We had incredibly good fortune with our staff liaisons, first Beth Ann Darby, and then Richard Sanders, our new executive director. As I said, we worked by conference call, and Richard spent over an hour and a half with us on a conference call the night before his very first day at work here at the OEA, and we were very impressed by that. In fact, the entire committee has been greatly impressed by his very obvious enthusiasm for this organizing initiative and his experience in this area. To gain the best understanding of this report, we need to go back to how it came to be. Up to today, if you asked an average OEA member around the state to associate three words, statewide, organizing, and OEA, with actions taken by OEA, the responses would most likely be related to the area of political action. Think of our Presidential Day rallies in Salem, making calls for measures, and of course the Pie Convention. As important as these political actions have been, they have not been successful enough. Just look at the funding situation that we're in. As a result, last year at this RA, the question arose as to why we, a statewide organization and a union, have not promoted more organized worksite activities and actions. Of course, we need to be active politically, but we are also a union. Aren't we missing a large part of our mission if we do not utilize the classic, respected legal tools of unionism? How, for example, have we gone all these years of cutbacks and losses without having had a single coordinated day of demonstrations, rallies, and protests at schools all over the state on a coordinated issue? Can anybody remember a statewide day where we all worked to the rule? From physics, we know that a fraction of a watt laser light is more intense and penetrating than a 100-watt old-fashioned filament bulb. Light waves come from both sources, but the waves from the laser work together and in step. They are coherent. For us to be coherent, we need to get together and be in step. We need to get organized. This thinking was the genesis of the new business item that passed at last year's RA and resulted in the report you're now hearing. And I'd like to very much thank the new business item supporters from last year's RA that led to the formation of this task force. With the new business item, the board was directed to appoint a task force to produce a report to, quote, propose how organized, statewide, or regional, that is multi-uniserv worksite actions will be utilized to promote quality working conditions and education in Oregon public schools. Additionally, the task force was charged with making recommendations for what specific actions might be taken, the mechanics of organizing these actions, what preparations would be needed for them to succeed, and a timeline to accomplish all these developments. Now, if that isn't a reasonable charge for a committee, I'm not sure what is. The report before you on white pages 137 to 141 in the reports tab is the result of that NBI and that task force. To cut right to the chase, let's look at the particular actions recommended by the task force. A summary of the actions is contained on page 139. The actions are in a particular tier, and the actions within each tier are not in order, but rather a menu of items with the single exception of the very first resolution or declaration by the board of a message or messages to coordinate all the subsequent actions. With that in mind, we can see that a wide range of actions is given as suggestions. The task force consciously worked to include only actions we knew had worked and were legal. Actions in Tier 1 include informational presentations, protests, rallies at local sites, lobbying of local officials, use of web pages and social media. That question just came up previously. Actions in Tier 2 include Level 1 working to the rule, coordination of cut days for regional rallying, marches, and vigils. A word more about working to the rule. Not everyone knows what this is. As teachers, we routinely donate huge amounts of hours beyond contract time because we care so much about what we do. These extra donated hours are actually essential to the running of schools. They could hardly operate without these donations. To make a point of this, we can work to the rule. That is, stop donating those hours. We enter the building at contract time together, leave at contract time together, and don't take work home. Imagine, as John Lennon might say. But doing this brings home an essential point about how much educators are giving already. And of course, it's totally legal. We're working to the contract and working to the rule. Tier 3 actions are obviously the most serious. Working to the rule's second level indicates more than going and coming at contract times and not taking work home. It also indicates dropping off of voluntary committees and assignments, and perhaps not taking on extra duty assignments when these are normally filled. Strikes can only occur at defined times in each local's bargaining process. Yet, in the worst case crisis, by looking ahead, locals at similar bargaining end stages could be coordinated in their strike actions for larger effect. Locals would not have to be alone in their most serious action. That's an overview of the recommended actions. More details and descriptions are in the report. But another charge to the task force was to indicate what preparations would be necessary to ensure the success of the recommended actions. We cannot institute a statewide campaign and have it fail. First, we need to motivate members. We need to let them know they are no longer alone in their actions. There is strength in numbers. They are part of a much larger, organized action that has a specific message to be voiced all across the state. This is what's new in our plan. Of course, in the past, individual locals have done all these actions and more for individual reasons. What's different is that we will now coordinate these actions all over the state for a common message and for common cause. Preparations that we need to do this. We need to survey members and local leaders to find out their views and members' views on potential actions and messages. We need to provide training and support for locals to carry out actions. With so many young members, we need to assume no experience for almost everything we are talking about. In many cases, we will be introducing a whole new generation of teachers to classic sets of union activities that will be totally new to them. There may be fear and apprehension on the part of some. We need to accept that and find ways to lessen those fears with positive actions and support. We need constant feedback from locals as to how the actions are going so we can monitor and adjust our actions. In other words, we'll need a tremendous devotion of time and resources from the organization at the state and at the local level to enable these recommendations to be carried out successfully. Since time and resources are in short supply everywhere, taking on this initiative is a major and daunting task for the organization. Given this challenge, I'm very happy to tell you this evening, as Gail reported to us just now, that this report has been enthusiastically accepted and adopted by the OEA Board and that its recommendations have been accepted. Organizing is set to get started. Further, there is living proof that this is not just another report that will gather dust. The members of this task force and others are being asked to join a major new structure being formed by OEA, a statewide organizing committee. The charge of this committee is, in part, to initiate these actions and carry out the recommendations of the task force. It will have enlarged representation. We are well on our way to organizing coherent actions around the state. I'd like to finish by just taking a minute or two to report on some of what motivated the task force members. This is a more personal aspect to what I've been talking about. Hopefully there are some themes here that will also motivate our members when called upon to do these actions. We have seen and are experiencing an unacceptable decline in the quality of the public education we can offer. Just yesterday in my own school, we were called into the library before classes and for the announcement of the cut list that I think maybe you've been seeing in your districts as well. And we had a single-spaced, full-page, there were probably 30 lines on that list. And the data projector put them up one by one. Each one, many of these were in the millions of dollars programs we all cherish. It was incredibly dispiriting. All this is happening as new vehicles are all over the roads, shopping stores are crowded, movies and athletes are grossing millions. How can education have come to such a low priority in society? This is where the new organizing initiative gives us some hope. With our new structure, we are going to get out the message about what is actually happening to our schools locally. People won't be able to miss it. The tremendous losses suffered by our kids in our schools should not be hidden from view. We cannot and will not let public education die quietly. In fact, we're not going to let it die at all. We have faith that the average person wants to support public education, that when given accurate information, that average person will support and pay for the increased public education funding that we need. But of course, we have our work to do. So much inaccurate information has been spread about schools. Now it's time to right that wrong with coordinated actions all over the state. With these actions, we are going to become the statewide mythbusters. Like that laser light I mentioned earlier, we can illuminate and destroy the myths created by the anti-public forces. Let's return meaning and honor to the phrase public good. These are lofty goals, but if successful, they translate into that kid in your class having half a chance at getting a good education. They translate into keeping this a profession that young people will want to stay in, and young people need to pick up this torch. In conclusion, the Statewide Organizing Task Force has made the report before you along with its recommended actions. The report and the recommendations have been accepted by the board. Do we have affirmation from the Assembly as well? Great. You do. Guys, come on up here. Come on up here. Come on up here. I want to get the committee up here because they did a lot of the work. Just come on up here. And we're off to a great start. Here's our committee members. Thank you, guys. Thank you, and let's get organized.
And thank you, Walt. I have to tell you guys something. This committee, before tonight, had never seen each other face to face. And look at the tremendous amount of work that they have brought to us. Thank you so very, very much. And thank you, Walt, for your leadership.